My favorite thing is to just remind people how powerful they are. I always say, like, fuck a guru, listen to your intuition. You know what's right for you. You got to listen to what's coming from deep down inside. You're more powerful than you give yourself credit, and god damn it, when you realize that, like, that's the best feeling ever. It's all about consistency. You need to give something much longer than you think for it to really take place. These habits and patterns don't take place overnight. My advice to someone who said that to me would be like, all right, do it for another 60 days and come talk to me. Tell me how you feel.
Yeah. Welcome back to Return to Weird. I'm your host, Jessa. Our next guest is a full-blooded Sicilian, forged by the Mediterranean sun and sculpted by ice baths. This man is known by many names. Some call him the Breath Father. Others know him as the Dopamine Don, the Mediterranean masochist, the parasympathetic playboy, the the mozzarella monk. With curls of conviction, I give you GianMarco Ricchiari. I really tried to do that without laughing. It was hard. GianMarco is an entrepreneur, a marketer, a videographer, and a biohacker. GianMarco, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Been stoked, been looking forward to this all week. So happy to be here.
Yeah. So what has your journey into personal development been like?
I was always a curious kid. And I think my introduction to some of like the being open-minded to some of the metaphysical and meditation and stuff, I always joke about it, but it started with the show Dragon Ball Z. I remember watching the show as a kid and like seeing episodes about them like meditating and like learning how to fly and like channeling energy. And I think this like created like a little inception in my head of like, maybe this is possible. So I think like my curiosity about some of this stuff and watching a lot of Kung Fu movies with my dad, like as a kid, like I think I was always curious about it. You know, where I think it really all started when I went off to college, I was at Coastal Carolina University. It's where we met. So I think I felt a lot of pressure to like go to college, even though I really didn't want to. I wasn't a studious kid. I didn't like school. I actually thought I was kind of dumb. Like was never a good student. When I started doing like school applications, I was like, well, if I'm gonna go to university, at least like let it be somewhere fun and cool. And I went to go visit Coastal and I was like, oh, cool. I can like be at the beach and party and do all this fun stuff. Like, great. And my freshman year, I mean, I was just going out 3-4 times a week, not taking school very seriously. And I found myself going into summer of freshman year. I had talked to my godfather, was like number 4 in a video game company, and like throughout high school and stuff, like whenever there was like take your child to work day, like I would go to his office and like learn about that. And during winter break freshman year, I asked him, I was like, hey man, like, do you think this summer I could do an internship at the video game company? And he was like, yeah, of course, man. Like 100%. When I got back from college in the summertime, I hit him up and he was like, dude, you didn't like apply or anything like that. Like, I can't just push you through the door. You know, you had to like do something. And it was like kind of this like big slap in the face of just like, whoa, okay. There was kind of that going on, as well as I think like eating like the shitty cafeteria food for the first time in my life, like breaking out in acne. My grades weren't good. I ended up like, I was tutoring Italian my freshman year of college, and that second semester, like my grades dropped below like a 2.75. And so they like put me on like a probation. So I couldn't even like make money while I was in college either. So like, and then I tried taking a stab at an entrepreneurial venture that like went sideways, and all these things were just like going wrong. And I found myself like sophomore year just realizing that I just like wasn't happy. Like I was just doing all these things that really just like led me to a point where I was just like, well, what is happiness? And that question turned me to Google, and I just started researching like what is happiness, and discovered meditation. And I was like, okay, like apparently this is like a gateway to, you know, being happier. So my first time meditating, I sat down for an hour and a half, which like I rarely do these days. And like had this crazy profound experience and was like, wow, there must be something to this. And so I started picking up some books on meditation, started to learn a little bit more about like self development and like these self help books or self development books, which I think at the time I had a big ego and like was just like, oh, I don't need that stuff. I think any time prior to that, I would have been like, I'm fine. Like, I feel like even before that, like I just didn't even like believe in depression. Like I didn't even think it was like a real thing. And I was just, naturally a very happy kid before this. And so around that same time when that internship fell through, I had a family friend who was running a marketing agency just like with one of his best friends, which was another one of my like family friends. And so they were like, hey man, like, we can't pay you or anything, but we can hang out every day and you can learn a bunch of cool stuff. And I think like that combination of having some older mentors to look up to who started putting me through a lot of really high level education in the marketing world. Really fortunate, like my mentor was really good at scraping the dark web, and also they were investing. They probably invested over like 100K in marketing education while I was studying marketing in school. It really allowed me to see the value in education for the first time. By junior, senior year, I felt like I knew more about marketing than most of my professors. I was actually doing it. And I started giving lectures in my marketing classes and really like went down and started to double down on myself. And I think this was the first like little insight I got as I started to learn more about all this stuff that I was actually passionate about. I was like, wait, I'm not dumb. Like I'm actually really smart, but like I realized like I didn't care about how many rings were around Uranus. Like if it was a class about making money, like I would have made A's, but it just was really like a focus thing.
Mhm.
And so I think like that's where the really big catalyst was for me to get into self-development.
Okay, so there's so much there. Thank you for sharing that. But I'm curious about the meditation experience or maybe how that connected to this question that you were asking of like, what is happiness? Did it give you any clarity into that or?
Yeah, I mean, I laid down on the floor and I kind of felt like I had like an outer body experience. So
Mhm.
it kind of woke up this like, okay, there's something here. Like I definitely had like a what I would describe as a weird experience. But I did feel this like sense of stillness, an ability to kind of really like hone in this like inner dialogue and see these like what I was like reading online of like your thoughts should be like a bird crossing the sky, not leaving a trace behind. It made sense to me. It was like these thoughts are coming in, and I think it was the first time I realized that like these thoughts are like programs just kind of running. And it was the first time that I really like was able to just sit there with my thoughts and just be like, wait, that's not me. That's these like programs that are running. And that was just really eye-opening in itself. And so that gave me, I think, the confidence to keep doing it. And I started meditating all the time and like my friends would make fun of me. Like we would go spend the weekend at the beach and we'd be hanging out and I'd be like, all right, guys, like, I'll see you guys in 20, 30 minutes. Like, I'm going to go over there and meditate. And they'd be all like, look at that meditating Marco over there. And I think in hindsight, it's so funny because now they all meditate and do all this stuff too. But I think I had some kind of like foresight and I was like, no, this stuff is like super powerful. And like, I kind of just like held my ground and like owned it. And I think like that is like a really big part. And I think like, for whatever reason, like I think my confidence and grounded nature of that, really like helped prove to some of my friends that like it can be cool. Like they didn't think it was cool to like meditate, you know? And I just kind of owned it. And then I started to also realize the power of just like owning it, like when you're doing something that like other people don't think is cool, but like like in your heart that it's cool, like it's great. And so that gave me confidence in it too. And being able to like share it with other people and some of my friends, like especially as I got a little older in college, like started talking to friends. I had friends like pulling me aside and being like, "Hey man, like, would you mind like doing a session with me? Like, can you teach me how to meditate?" And I did a few of these with some of my friends, and they got value from it, and it started to like inspire me a little bit. And I think with all like the education I was learning in marketing and all this stuff, realizing that where I was excelling the most in college was like in my entrepreneurship classes, like doing public speaking. That gave me like a lot of confidence, but it was something that I realized that like one day I want to be, on stages or consulting with other people, sharing what I think has helped me so much. That's where it really all started.
Do you want to share a little bit about where you are now, or maybe any visions that you have for yourself, where you see yourself taking all of that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, as time went on, I continued to be a sponge. Like I think like between like my own like experiences and then like obviously consulting a lot with my mentor, like he would really instill this like idea of like your job is just to learn, learn, learn. Like be a sponge, be humble, like pretend like you know nothing. Even if you're talking to someone and it seems like you know exactly what they're gonna say or what they could provide as value, pretend like you know nothing. And I really held on to this like core value for a lot of my going into young adulthood. And I continued to just, humble myself and continue learning. And it made me realize like I read one book growing up. Like I spark notes to everything growing up. But I think the only book I ever read as a child was Holes. and
Oh, yeah.
Great book. It was the first time I found myself reading, and I remember I got back from college and I was sitting out on the back deck reading a book, and my mom walks out and she's like, "Is this my son? You're reading a book right now? Like, who is this?" And I thought it was so cool to read a book. This is the first time I had this realization, but I was
Sorry, I thought it was so cool to read a book.
it's like you have to be humble when you're reading a book because you're just listening, especially like the way that a lot of self-development books are like articulated. Like you can't interject. You can't like cut the person off. You can't give your own opinion. Like you just got to shut up and listen to their perspective. And I thought this was like so powerful in terms of like, okay, I can like cut the learning curve on stuff. And I think like I was a little tribute. I had a brother who was 6 years older than me. And I learned so much from my older brother. Like he got in trouble all the time. And like I got to skip a lot of, turmoil and problems just because I learned a lot from my older brother. And this was like the same thing I was going through, taking all these courses and reading all these books. And so I just continued to learn. I realized shortly after that I was an audio learner. And I always had trouble like reading. I even like learned how to read like later. Like I don't know. I think I was like 8 when I like learned how to read. And it wasn't. I
Really?
don't think I was like incapable. I just didn't have the attention span. And like
Mhm.
I noticed all throughout like grade school, like I would be reading a book and I would like end up at the bottom of the page and be like, wait, what the fuck did I just read? And like because my mind, I would read something interesting and then my mind would go off somewhere else and
Yeah.
then I would have to reread the page again. But I realized that with audiobooks, like I'm really good at absorbing the information and for whatever reason I can like articulate it back very easily. And and then I thought about like my time in college and I was like, yeah, the classes that I actually like went to class and the teacher taught what they were like testing you on. I didn't really have to study a whole lot. Like if I just absorbed it like audio wise, so I started like absolutely pounding audiobooks. And when I first started, when I got out of college, I was basically a real estate investor. I was bartending. And then I was always fascinated by like side hustles. And I had this like vision when I was in college where I was like, I want to, during Valentine's Day, I want to like deliver flowers. Like I feel like that would be like a really good way to like make some quick cash. So that first like year I was out of college, I cold called like 15 different flower delivery businesses and and landed like the highest paying one out of all of them and did it. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to keep doing this?" So I was basically doing my entrepreneurial stuff, delivering flowers, bartending, and whenever I was delivering flowers, I was just listening to audiobooks the whole time. And anytime I was like working out, or driving to work or whatever it might be. I was just absorbing information. And I started to see like a pattern that, the more information I was absorbing and talking to my mentors and business colleagues, the more that it was separating me from kids my own age. And very quickly, I think I found myself with like a mindset of someone much older than me at a young age, and it started to differentiate me from a lot of people my age, essentially.
Did that
So,
did did you
go ahead.
shift your friend group?
I think around that time too, I started to step away from some of these relationships that I think weren't serving me. I started to see the difference in like people that were just kind of like weekend warriors and, not really investing in themselves. And then I stopped dating girls my age too. Like I took a big interest in like dating women that were older than me, and like I felt like anyone that I was going to surround myself with, like I wanted to learn from. If I hear a statistic like you're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with, like I gravitate towards that. Same with like the the students who sit in the front of the row, like 90% of them get A's. So I started sitting in the front row, like of all my college classes. And I was like, shit, I'll be the one kid who gets a B in the front row. And so, yeah, I felt like it was really important to surround myself with the right people. And, my biggest rule now with like friends is that they should inspire you. Like if you're not inspired by your best friends, then should you really be like giving them that much time? I think like you should be looking up to them for something, whether it's one thing or another. I think that's so important.
Mm. Does it have to be inspiring? There can be other qualities that maybe
I
I'm
think
thinking.
like if they're like a really good listener or something, then you
Yeah,
probably are like you look up for them because they're such good
I
listeners.
see.
They're like, so I think in some way, yeah, it does kind of relate back to that inspiration.
Yeah. Okay, so what I hear you saying is like there is some quality about this person that I admire and
Yep.
therefore that's inspiring.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, because inspiring is subjective, right? What
Sure.
inspires me might be different than what
Yeah.
inspires you.
And
Yeah.
so going back to like your initial question, like, I think learning about all this stuff with mindset, pushed me also down like the biohacking route. And like being an athlete my whole life, like I've always been like into working out and physical stuff, but I started to realize I think like I had little like of moments where like I would be like, I think there was a time like I was in the shower, like in high school, and I like picked up like the shampoo and was like, what are all these ingredients? Like, I can't pronounce any of this stuff. Like, why do we do this? And I started questioning. I think in general, like, I have a very skeptical mindset. As a kid, I was always like, why? This really pushed me down into just wanting to understand and clean up like all the bullshit that we were attributing ourselves, like learning about microplastics, and then later on like learning about like grounding and breath work and cold exposure, and really just like trying it, like split testing everything. And I think part of that like mindset came from learning about marketing and how you have to split test everything, let the data do the talking, and don't just listen to studies, but like actually have some anecdotal experience behind these things. And yeah, so I think like that whole trajectory was kind of partially innate, like that curiosity, that kind of defiance with like the mainstream and society. And like I think there's also like a deep uh core value of wanting to be different and not going with like along with anything. Anytime like a kid was copying me as a kid, like I would just be like, dude, stop copying me. Like, I'm the one who came up with this. Like, so I don't know. I've always been a little bit skeptical, I think, about some of this. Like, I remember the first time I heard like Tony Robbins stuff, I was just kind of like, yeah, this is like woo woo. Like, I don't subscribe to any of this. But I think after having this experience a little bit later on in life, I was a little bit more open to it, but I started researching like all the science behind breath work and meditation and grounding. And it was with that like science, and because I think like the way our world works is like claim evidence. It's how we're educated. And so I think it's really important to be able to like explain this like woo woo metaphysical stuff with scientific evidence. It's the only way that like most people are gonna start to comprehend and understand it. And being the super extrovert talkative person, I'd be like bartending and I'd be like talking to someone and they'd be like, yeah, I don't drink water. And I'd be like, what do you mean you don't drink water? Like, yeah, I only drink lemonade. And I'm like, and then I would just be so curious, like, how are they getting through life like this? Like,
Mm.
and I would just start educating them on like the benefits of being hydrated. And and then I found how like my ability to articulate some of this stuff with the scientific claim evidence approach made it really powerful and gave me a lot of confidence in continuing down that path.
What are your biohacking secrets? Like, what are the top things that you would give
That's a great
to,
question.
and like generally things that can be applied for every person regardless of their circumstance? Because I feel like
Yeah, there was a
everything did.
point a few years ago that I like made a list of like 65 things or something like that. And I mean, I think there's like a lot you can do. We like take like the 80-20 rule, right? Like when it comes to like supplements, like I think there's a lot of things that you can supplement. I think my number one is like electrolytes. Like if I were to just
Mm.
like pick one thing to make sure that I like always have is electrolytes. Like the relationship between like magnesium, sodium, potassium, iodine,
Mhm.
I think that's so huge. We're all deficient in these things. Like we know that our soil is, not what
Mhm.
it used to be. We're not getting the minerals we need. Number one for me on like the supplement side is electrolytes. Big on the magnesium in general. I think like moving away from that, I think sleep hygiene is such an important thing. Once I learned that your melatonin peaks at 10 o'clock for most people, small percentage of people it's 11. And then after midnight, it actually starts to drop. So, I mean, even if you go to bed at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and you sleep 9 hours, it's not the same as going to bed at 10 o'clock and sleeping 9 hours. That was, something really, really big. I think, another thing that's really powerful is cutting out like seed oils. A lot
Mhm.
of these things are, they're just horrible for the body, and it's really what causes a lot of this like artery clog and buildup. It's not, these like healthy fats like eggs and butter and these things that are actually really good for you. But I think in general, like I always had a really good diet. My parents wouldn't let me drink soda. They wouldn't let me, eat fast food and all these things. And I think like growing up in an Italian household, like I was always eating really good and I
Mhm.
learned how to cook just by spending time in the Italian kitchen. Like I didn't even realize that when I went off to college, like I knew how to cook. And
Wait,
just came natural. Like I was just like, okay. But I mean, I think your diet and food is fuel. And I think one of the most important things that someone can do when it comes to diet, because I do believe in like biodiversity, I think everyone's different, is to actually start to like split test, how you feel when you're consuming certain things and start to eliminate certain things. And I got pushed into that from like a weird angle. Like I started dealing with all these like gut issues in my mid 20s. I was eating a lot of like kale, spinach. I was eating still like a decent amount of protein, but I was like falling to a lot of the um, what I think around that time period was being pushed a lot of like the vegan movement
yeah.
and uh and so I was like really trying to make sure I got all these like plants and stuff, but I was dealing with stabbies and like unfortunately
What
big
are stabbies?
stabbies, like, in the stomach, like
Oh.
and I was dealing with, like I know it's, like, a little bit I'm being very vulnerable here, but I was dealing with hemorrhoids a lot, like, in my 20s, and I knew that was, not normal, and so having all these issues, I decided to, like, start a little journal and started writing down, like, every time I was dealing with stomach issues, I started writing down like what I ate and trying to track it. And over time, I started to cut out certain things. Started reading books on diet and trying different stuff. Like I tried the warrior diet at one point, where you're just eating like one big meal a day. I learned about intermittent fasting and started applying that. And through the progression of this, I figured out really like how my body thrives the most. And I think it's different for everyone, but I encourage others to try different things. For me, my my body thrives on a little bit more of like an animal based diet, where I'm having mostly like fruits in terms of carbs, but the rest of the time
Mhm.
it's protein, eating at least my body weight in protein and healthy
Uh,
fats. And
Out of curiosity, would you know what your blood type is?
type O, which is
Oh my god, crazy. Yeah.
type O,
So
but more adaptive to meat.
right. Do you think
Yep,
that's true, right? Do you think there's validity to this? Because
I do.
I need meat.
Yeah, yeah, no, I do
I'm
think that there's.
O2.
Yep, and I think with your Italian background too,
Right. So there's also like this ancestral piece too, because our body's going to respond better to foods that our ancestors have been eating. Like your body's just equipped for that kind of composition.
absolutely. And I think people like from Peru, there's like 4,000 types of corn, right? So like that are native to that land, and like those people have been eating corn their whole lives, going back millennia. And so
Mm.
I think people from that part of the world are going to be a lot more adaptive to eating corn, which is the highest in lectins, which is a protein that is very like harsh on your gut. It breaks down your gut wall.
Oh,
It's
that's
why,
like what's in nightshades,
yeah,
right? I think.
there's multiple types of like plant toxins, and like the whole concept behind that is like plants can't fight or run, so they develop these defense chemicals
Yeah.
so that they can
Hmm.
maintain their you know being. And I also think like plants are conscious beings, and like there's a really interesting study about a guy who created the lie detector.
Mm.
He put a lie detector on a plant, and he saw it spike at one point. He wasn't really paying
Hmm.
attention to it, but he saw it spike. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah. Uh huh.
And so he was like walking around his
Wait.
lab.
Wait. Did you tell me this?
I don't think
I
so.
think. Okay.
And so he was like
I think you
walking around
did.
his lab. He's like trying to figure it out. He's like, maybe I'll water it. Maybe I'll cut one of these things. And nothing was making it go off. And then all of a sudden he's like, maybe I should burn it. And the minute he thought that, it spiked. And like the minute I heard this study, I was like, wow, like plants are conscious. Like this is so evident to me that, there's an aspect of that. And I also like think that there's a relationship with like gratitude in your food. And I think that like there's a relationship between giving grace. I think there's a reason why that has been taught for thousands of years. Um,
Mhm.
to give grace to your food. And I think there's a relationship with like how your body absorbs the nutrients based on the gratitude. How to explain that scientifically, I don't think I can do. I don't think I can articulate it, but I do believe it. Like I feel like I've seen it, but I don't know if there's studies out there that support that or what.
Well, it's easy to believe if you've had the experience yourself. Like, just try it and see what happens. With certain things, I feel like we don't need the science. We just need to have the direct experience because some people will have the science, but without the direct experience, they won't believe the science because there's always something that can invalidate. There's always like a study that will counter it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel
100.
like the best way is just direct experience. But I think the whole thing about gratitude with food has to do with relationship, having a relationship with what you are consuming.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
probably a
well,
lot easier for our ancestors who like lived and breathed it. Like they're, especially if they were like hunter gatherers, and I think like you look at like the Native Americans, they would pray over like the animal and
mhm.
give thanks like right there, right when they killed it. And obviously they were eating it fresh, like right then and there. But yeah, I think it's extremely powerful. And I would say that a gratitude practice is one of the big things that I would say is in my like, top 10, things
Mhm.
super important. I think how you shape your self-talk is super important. And I think in terms of like manifesting your reality, like gratitude is one of the golden keys to that.
Yeah. Can you say more?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's one of those things that you you bring things into this reality through bringing it up to like an I am. Um, but I think it really starts with um creating this relationship, like you said, with things where there's a like metaphysical frequency. Like if you look at everything in this universe, Nikola Tesla, right? Like frequency, vibration, and sound. So the way that we can impact our reality is by changing the frequency. And so when you look at like the frequency of these emotions, Makeo Ukaku, or I think is his name. Like I don't know, I could be pronouncing it wrong, but he's done studies on like I'm sure you're familiar with this, but like freezing water with like
Mm.
intentions written on it, and you see the molecular structure of water dependent on like what was written on it, or the one that he did
Mhm.
with like fermented rice, and how he went up to it and was like, "You suck, I love you," ignored it.
Mhm.
And the one that he said, like, "I love you," like fermented properly, didn't have any mold. The one that like he said, "You suck too," molded and got all bad. And the one he ignored was even worse. And so, I think like learning about these studies and learning about like how our universe works in terms of like quantum physics and like the double slit experiment, like things are existing, non existing, they're
Mm.
there, they're not there, it's all happening all at the same time. Help really like fortify this thought. And like, I'm a big advocate of going down the rabbit hole of like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, understanding epigenetics, understanding that even like cancer diseases, all these things take you have like I think it's like 80,000 different codes of DNA, but we're only
Mm.
activating 24,000 to 28,000 at a time, depending on how you live your life. You're turning on and turning off this DNA. And I think that all this goes back to like this like manifesting aspect and like where your frequency and how you're, it's like you do this like manifesting practices, but it also changes the
Mhm.
internal um component of it. And I think like even like the body language aspect of it, like Amy Cuddle's like fake it till you make it, like her study about like people who sat like this versus people who sat like this, like their cortisol would drop or
Mhm.
like, raise big time if they were like this, and their serotonin and dopamine would go up big time like this. But I think it's also like you're occupying more space in reality. Like
Mhm.
there's a vibration to that. There's understanding that relationship is so important. And Dr. Joe's whole story was so inspiring to me. I could not shut up about it after I read his first book. I would just tell everyone. I was like, you got to look into this. Like, you have control, you have the power. And my favorite thing is to just remind people like how powerful they are. Like, I always say like fuck a guru, fuck a teacher, fuck a priest, like fuck all that noise. Like listen to your intuition. Like what's
Mhm.
right for you. You got to listen to what's coming from deep down inside. But like you're more powerful than you give yourself credit. And god damn it, when you realize that, like that's the best feeling ever.
If you had a recommendation for people to get in contact with that felt sense of power. And I wanna use the word power carefully though, because like power can also, I don't mean power in the sense of like power
So,
over, obviously,
yeah.
right? Not how power shows up in a lot of relational dynamics and systems in the world. I mean, an inner power. Oh, you know who it was? I think it was was it David Hawkins who made the distinction between force and power. And so kind of like reclaiming the word power by differentiating it with force. So force is like you're bulldozing through something, you're making something happen, which usually means you have to like trample over other people to get there. And power is intrinsic. Like
Right.
it comes from within, so it's sustainable and it doesn't require that you um, fuck over other people to
Right.
obtain it. So
I
you're
think
talking about that power.
yeah, I believe I am. And I believe that it begins with reflecting on your own life experiences. I think we've all had this experience in one shape or another, but the example I'll use is like you go to run a mile, right? And you're like 80% of the way through and you had set the intention of running 1 mile, but you're 80% of the way through and you're kind of like, I think I can go a little further. I think I can do a mile and a half, and then you do, and then it's that right there where you realize, damn, I'm more powerful than I gave myself credit. And so I think like if you can start with like reflecting on moments where you surprised yourself and then make it a habit to surprise yourself going forward. And I'm a firm believer that like where the uncomfort is, that's where the growth is. And the more that you can challenge yourself and go do things that scare the fuck out of you, that make you uncomfortable and overcome them, the more powerful intrinsically that you become and the more capacity you have for uncomfort. And therefore, the more you will grow. And, you know, you could continue to live your life in comfort and do the same thing every day, or you can get out in the world and, you know, face your fears and go do those things and continue to grow. You could be the same person you are your whole life because you're not changing anything, or you can get after it and challenge yourself. And I personally would rather live a life with like, you know, if every day you were to put on a scale of like 1 to 10, like 10 being happiness, 1 being, you know, the lowest emotion. And I'd rather live a life of like ones and twos and nines and tens than every day being a five. And
Yeah.
you know, if you're living your life every day as a five, like you probably don't even remember what you had for breakfast that day. Like nothing is unique. And, you know, I think it's way more powerful to live a life where you've garnered these experiences of having these super low lows and these super high highs, peaks and valleys. But it's those like low lows, those ones and twos sometimes are way more powerful than those nines and tens. Cause I think that's where you're cocooning, you're in this, like, dark stage, but, like, in hindsight, I think most of us can look back at some of those, like, ones and twos and be like, "But that's when I made a difference. That's when I was pushed to the brink to, like, challenge myself, to go take that leap of faith," and I think that's so powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, to get out of your comfort zone and continuously challenge yourself. Like, I think we were just having this conversation earlier, right? It's like building your nervous system capacity to hold more. Otherwise, you're stuck at the 5 and you're just in autopilot
Yep,
and there's nothing new happening because you're just with what's comfortable.
absolutely.
I feel like I was stuck in that phase for a while. Have you ever been stuck in that for a good extended period of time?
I think, yeah, like, when I was, like, in middle school, high school, like, I think, like, once I had that, like, big shift in consciousness, I think I really like was just constantly trying to make myself uncomfortable. I'm pretty much like self-taught with like everything. Like learning how to run a marketing agency, being an entrepreneur and like everything I learned about Facebook ads, Google ads, like sales psychology, all of that was, you know, through me like not knowing shit about it and me being like, well, I'm going to learn. I'm going to just like put
Mhm.
myself into this uncomfortable situation. I'm going to try it. I'm going to go out there and get real world experience. I think I learned like through my experience in college where I was like, you know, I'm learning like in my marketing classes, like definitions for shit I already knew versus my marketing courses outside of college where I was actually doing shit. And I was like, real life experience is tenfold what you garnered just by, like, being in that comfort
Mhm.
of, like, just kinda
Yeah.
learning things in theory, but not applying it. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like, there was a time in my life, like, in my, you know, middle school, high school times where I think one of the biggest life lessons I had was my first love was soccer. I grew up, since I was 3 years old playing soccer, and, I was like as a little kid, like, everyone around me was just kinda like this kid's gonna be a professional soccer player. Like, he's obsessed with it. He won't put on any shirt other than a soccer jersey. Like, he's obsessed with it, and, I ran into I was also, like, a little bit of a bad kid, so I got in trouble when I was in 8th grade. I was egging some houses. I ended up egging a teacher's house and, completely, like, destroyed this, friend of a friend's house, like, threw a bunch of stuff in their pool. Like, we were just out there causing mischief, and, one of the kids who's out doing this stuff with us ratted on us. And all this got back to the coaches. And my freshman year of high school, I went out for the soccer team. They did a point system, and I found myself number one on the point system. And so I was kind of thinking, I was going through the tryout, going like, "Oh yeah, like I got this in the bag. Like I'm clearly like one of the guys." And when they came to do the roll call at the end of it, they didn't take me. And and I think it, related back to like, this kid's a delinquent. And this really like fucked with my like confidence about it. And instead of like using that as fuel to, improve myself, I just kind of gave up on my dream of wanting to become a professional soccer player. And like I continued to play for fun. I played like in college, like club, and continued to play for fun, but I stopped taking it seriously. But like a few years later, when I went through that kind of little bit of a transformation, I I kind of reflected on that time period of my life, and I was like, never again will I give up on something that I'm insanely passionate about. Like, I'll never do that again. And I think at that time, I was living life as a 5, 5, 5 every day. I think, like, I didn't know the difference. I didn't know really what, like, 1s and 2s and 9s and 10s were, like, I think maybe, like, not making the team freshman year was, like, a 1 or a 2 experience, but I don't think I had, like, the resilience and understanding of, like, I didn't have that Michael Jordan, like, idea of, like, "Oh, I didn't make the team freshman year. I'm gonna become so good
Hmm.
that they're gonna have to take me sophomore year." And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, there's that giant shift, and, I think I've held that value, like, where, being an entrepreneur was really tough. I mean, it took me, like, 4 years of being an entrepreneur before I actually, like, broke through, and I got to quit bartending, and I had the freedom of traveling the world and working from my laptop and, doing what my dream was. Although, like, when I was 19 and started as an entrepreneur, I was like, "Oh, I'll own my own house by 23. Like, I'll make millions of dollars and all this stuff." That was far from the truth at 23. At 23, I was still struggling, and it wasn't until a couple of years later that I finally broke through and did what 99% of entrepreneurs fail at, and built a successful business all on my own without the help of anyone, without any money, without anything, and with a shoestring budget, and I just out of work ethic. And, I'm really proud of myself for not giving up and just pushing through and doubling down on myself.
This can bring us into the conversation about entrepreneurs needing to be more like creatives and creatives needing to be more like entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I love talking to entrepreneurs and creatives. I mean, I think it's because like I see myself like I am a very creative, artsy person. Um, I love to do videography. I love to create art. Like in general, like I'm always just kind of like I'll take a stab at like any art form. Decided to like make jewelry one time. Like just as like, "Oh, can I make jewelry? Like, can I do it?" I have this, like, giant elephant in my office that I did, like, a paint drop. I built this, like, elephant head and did a paint drop on it, and, like, I think in general, like, it's I have this, like, creative aspect, but being an entrepreneur and getting into business and all this stuff, like, I was attributed to all the work ethic and everything that it takes to be an entrepreneur and how structure and all these things are so important. But it really, like, started this conversation really started to, like, dawn on me, um, when I became a little bit more fortified in business and in, like, all the self-development stuff, because I think, a big thing that I do on, like, sales calls with entrepreneurs is I don't shy about being myself. I'll curse on purpose. I'll tell them about my whys and how I got into this and why I think marketing can change the world, and how with marketing you can change culture and
Mhm.
get behind the right ideas, for profits, nonprofits, and really make a big impact, and how everything's marketing and sales. But I would go into this stuff, even though it was completely unrelated to the services I was selling. And these guys would, typically be 20, 30 years older than me, oftentimes millionaires, very successful. But they would be like, Marco, like, I feel like I need to like step away and do like a retreat with you, or learn how to do some meditating or some breath work. And I used to, like, when I was younger, like put these really successful guys up on a pedestal. But I realized that, like, because I spent my 20s like working on my emotional intelligence and self-development and all these things, I was actually, like, in a weird way, light years ahead of some of these guys. These guys just got really good at making money. They got really good at playing the game, but they didn't know how to regulate their nervous systems. They didn't understand why, their relationships were falling apart and all these things. They didn't understand why they didn't have a lot of energy, but they just pushed through and all that. Which made me feel like there was like a giant gap. And then I would also talk to, because I'm in these like artist space, like I think like I spin fire, and I'd be like, out like spinning fire with a bunch of other fire performers, and I would start getting to know them, and I would be like, man, there's no ambition, there's no drive. He's happy making $10 an hour and just like living, you know, barely like paycheck to paycheck and all these things, like okay with like struggling. Like they would complain about struggling, they would complain about all these things. And like, I'm not a huge fan of like just the victim mentality in general. Like I would identify this in other people and be like, you're forgetting how powerful you are. Like I would just see that. I would just be like, you have capacity for more. You just need to change your self-talk and all these things. But I would see how these creatives like go about life, and they're working on their art just on like inspiration and muse. And like a lot of them had these like really unhealthy habits of like they would be like making music until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then like sleep all day, and then wake up like like it's 4 o'clock, I gotta go wait tables or whatever it is to make a little bit of money. And then like and then they're just stuck in the same place. And I couldn't believe how many super talented artists and creatives I kept meeting that were just like not breaking through. And it wasn't until I heard and met this DJ named Enamor, and I heard his story, and I thought it was really interesting because this guy, he was an accountant and in his 20s, and so he was used to working 9 to 5, but he always had this passion for music and producing music. And he basically quit his accounting job, saved up a bunch of money, which most creatives and artists don't have the luxury of doing, right? Because they're most of them are doing these like odd jobs and stuff. But he quit his accounting job and decided to take his music seriously and work on it as a 9 to 5. And within 1 year, he broke through, and now he's, a touring artist, and he's quite talented.
Ooh, can I say something about this? I feel like
Absolutely.
my okay, so I think this might be an important piece. He had the resources
Yeah,
to do that, right? So for some reason, I kept on thinking about just the root chakra. Just that's how my mind today is like integrating what you're saying.
survival.
Um, right. And so if you don't have the foundation, a lot of that foundation, which makes our nervous system feel safe, is resources,
Right.
which unfortunately
Uh-huh.
is money,
Yeah.
right? It can be tough if you don't come from money and you have to build financial security for yourself, but you have this like big vision and this creative dream. You need to have a solid root chakra. You need to have the resources in order to really thrive as a creative. And what I'm really getting at is you can't be in survival because then you're operating from this space of lack. So how can you create
Yeah, I
the
think I think what it comes down to, people who are in that position, you have to be that much more ruthless about your discipline, about your time management and all these things. Like,
Mm, yeah.
obviously going after things that might put you in a better financial position is, you gotta take one step back maybe to take two steps forward. That might be the solution for some people, especially if they're like, "I'm already super disciplined, like, I'm already doing all these things." Well, it's like, maybe you need to take one step back and maybe work a job for a year and save up some money
Mhm.
so that you can go 110% into your art form. And I think, but for most people, it is really about like that structure and developing that, habit of being very disciplined and being like, hey, I got this phone call, my friend's calling me. It's like, well, I'll call them when I'm available. Like, I'm not going to just take the call, and having more like self-worth in that.
Mm.
And that resonates with me a lot because I thought it was funny how when I was bartending, I was my friend's bar. I basically, like, after college was just like, "Yo, can you teach me how to bartend?" And I hopped in and started doing it, and pretty quickly, like, he made me like a brunch manager. So I was working. I would go to work at 3 p.m. on Friday. I'd work till 3 a.m. I would wake up at 9, open the bar, manage brunch, and then work until 3 a.m. and then do it again Sunday. And sleep wasn't happening. But well, what's funny is, like, I was never late for work once. And when it was someone else's business, I think, like, the pressure
Mhm.
or, like, just the authority or whatever it might have been, or, like, knowing that, like, other people are counting on me, and that's a big part of it. But having these, like, expectations that I knew I couldn't, like, let other people down, I did it every time. But there was so many days in my own business, Monday through Friday, that I would be late for myself. And so I think a lot of these artists that are in that situation, they need to give themselves even more self-respect, and I think that's what it comes down to, is self-love and self-respect, and that means going to bed at the right time. That means not compromising on these, deadlines that you give yourself. Like, you
Mhm.
need to hold yourself accountable and know that's coming from a place of love.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and very helpful. It's like cultivating the inner father, right?
Mm,
Because these are masculine qualities,
definitely.
discipline, containment, right? If we're just frolicking in the daisy fields all day, like just like la la la, la, like just it totally like lost in the feminine. It's like where are we going? We can get lost. There's just no direction. You don't actually see anything become manifest in your physical reality because you're just like, this is fun. I'm enjoying how this feels and blah blah blah. So that's like the creative piece that entrepreneur how can the entrepreneurs embody more of that?
Right, so, I think, one of the big things that I think keeps entrepreneurs, like, in a lower frequency with a lot of that stuff is this, like, really high expectations on themselves. They put a lot of pressure on themselves, and I think, like, it's a different type. It's self-love still, but I think it's a different kind where, they need more balance. They need more, like, it's okay to have fun sometimes. I think for me in my career, like, there'd be tons of days where, like, I accomplished a lot of shit, but I would put my head to the bed and I would be like, dude, I didn't do enough today. Like, I didn't live up to my expectations. I didn't get everything done on my to-do list. And I would beat myself up over it. And I think, like, having grace, I think that practice of grace for yourself is one of the biggest things that I think entrepreneurs can do to tap into that. And so, I think a lot of these entrepreneurs can really benefit from gratitude practice, from meditation, from learning how to calm their nervous system so that they can actually be more abundant in their lives in terms of the emotional side of things. I think they're oftentimes very logical oriented, and maybe they like society, like, supports, like, people like finances and
Yeah.
IQ, but society does not support EQ.
Mhm.
And I think society needs to value EQ a lot more. and put it at least at the same standard
Yeah.
as IQ and finances. And so I think, more entrepreneurs need to see the benefit of slowing down and taking time for themselves and practicing self love, gratitude, meditation, and healthy sleep cycle. These things that are going to help them calm their nervous system.
Yeah, what would you say? Because I definitely have heard men specifically be like, "I've tried gratitude and I don't get it." My sense is that they're not actually feeling gratitude. Maybe there's some blockage in the heart. What would you say to somebody who's like, "Yeah, just not feeling it?"
I'd be like, you're full of shit. Like,
That's
like I'd be like,
helpful.
what did you do it for like 3 days?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you do it for 365 days? And then you told me that, like, I'd be like, okay, all right, maybe it
Okay,
doesn't
so
work. But like,
repetition and consistency.
yeah, because I think like maybe at first you're not feeling it, but you're doing it, like, and it's happening. But I think
Mhm.
over time, and I think like there's a few different like gratitude practices where like, you know, maybe like you challenge yourself to like not repeat the same thing every day. So then you start like you're operating throughout your day, like looking for things to be grateful for. And, then you start to change. But I do also think that there's really like certain things that like as a human being, maybe unless you're like some sort of sociopath or something, that you're gonna have gratitude for, like when someone does some sort of act of service for you and makes your life a little bit easier. I think most of us can really connect to those things. Um, but I think it's all about like consistency. You need to give something, much longer than you think for it to really take place. These things don't happen. These habits and patterns don't take place overnight. I think my advice to someone who said that to me would be like, all right, do it for another 60 days and come talk to me. Tell me how you
Mhm.
feel.
Yeah, that's good. That's solid advice. Consistency and repetition.
And I would say even reflection. It's like, okay, you're doing this like gratitude practice and you thought about these things and you're not feeling that emotion. Ask yourself why and sit there. Literally just be like, why? Like talking to yourself
Mhm.
and sit there and be like, well, what comes up? Like those thoughts that come up, like that's your intel right there. What's holding you back from feeling that emotion of true gratitude for that thing?
Yeah,
And
really good point. Yeah, there might be a dialogue that they're not aware of. This is stupid. This isn't going to work. I can't do this. I don't feel anything, right?
definitely. And then that deters them from being consistent because they're like, well, I'm just wasting time. I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard that from people about like meditation. Like, I'm like, if you don't think you have 10 minutes to meditate, then you
Mhm.
probably need to meditate for 30 minutes.
Mm, yeah.
Like, that's what's actually gonna help you. If you think that, like, you can't get it done in 10 minutes, then double it. And, you'll see. If you stay consistent with it, you'll see how it helps. I mean, there's a lot of scientific evidence supporting it. Um, and it's one of the big things in the workshop that I teach. I think, a lot of that comes back to that, like, self-love and gratitude. I think ultimately that's one of the most powerful things that we can gift that we can give ourselves.
Is this the Create Your Day workshop?
It is. It is.
You want to say more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being in the self-development world for a long time, I've attending, meditations and breath work and yoga classes and like all these things. Like I noticed like you feel amazing afterwards. Like you feel so good. I think we've all felt this, whether it's after a workout or could attribute it to really like anything that we do that like ups and elevates our consciousness. But then what? You go about your day and throughout the day, things happen in your environment and it brings you back down. And then you're like, oh, I got to go do another workout to feel good. I got to go do another yoga class or meditation or breath work to feel good. You're always relying on this thing external of yourself to feel good. So I had this like giant realization where I was like, all right, what happens if we take the time after you finish that yoga class after you finish that breathwork session or meditation to set your intentions. And this is what the Create Your Day workshop's all about. So, I put people through what I've found, like in my experience of studying all these meditation practices and everything. I basically culminated 5 different meditation practices um, to elevate your consciousness. The whole point really is to elevate your consciousness. And then you want to set your intentions. So, I think once you complete that thing, it's super important when you're like the closest you could be to your higher self to ask yourself, like, how do I want to show up today? How do I want to be perceived? How might I deal with any obstacles that are coming my way? How would I, you know, be that person that I want to be? And then literally list out the different things that you want to accomplish that day. And then set that intention. And then when you go back into your environment and these things occur that they're naturally going to occur, you're going to have that first initial pull to like be emotional or reactive or be like, I'm going to stop doing what I was doing and go handle that problem. But then you have that voice in your head that's like, wait, I set my intentions. I know what I'm supposed to do today. That's just noise. And so I think this is such a powerful practice. It's so often overlooked by all these like gurus and people that help people that, we elevate this consciousness, but we're not like setting these intentions. And like what really triggered this thought for me was going through I think Brandon Bouchard's book, and how he started to realize that these high achievers, they set their intentions for everything they do, whether they're like getting in the car, like right when they get in their car to drive, they're like, how do I want to drive today? Like how will I go about this when I go to the gym, when I go into a work call? Setting your intentions is the most important thing. And I think if you can set your intentions when you're in an elevated state of mind and closer to your higher self, then you actually take control over your autonomy over your life. And I think if you can create your day, you can create your week, you can create your month, you can create your year, you can create your life.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you earlier, but didn't get a chance to, so I'm going to ask you now. You mentioned before this question of what is happiness. You out with that now? What would you say?
Yeah, I think about this pretty often. I know it's like a subjective thing, like what like happiness is. And I think like it's important that we all like come to terms with like what that definition means to us. To me, you know, I think like it's an emotion, it's a feeling. It's okay to not be happy. I think like I came to that realization that like that's okay. It's all right, man. Like, and I think like putting like love over happiness, I think is really important. Um, I think like respect over happiness. Like, I look back at some of these times of like darkness and ones and twos, like we were talking about earlier, and like I'm so happy now that I went through those things. It's so ironic. Like those dark times created future happiness. So, I think this thought of like chasing happiness is fleeting. I'm grateful that I had that thought of like I'm not happy. Um but I don't like strive for happiness like I used to. Or what was that like catalyst? I think what's important to me is like like making sure that I'm living a life that I'm not leaving anything on the table, that I actually like went for it 100%. And I know that like going for it 100% is going to create uncomfort. It's not going to make you happy. Um, but I don't want to have like regrets. I want to make sure that I like took my time here on earth to be the best John Marco I can be. And I understand that emotions are fleeting. And I think also balance. I think, after, I went through a time period where this was about a year ago during actually this time. I had taken a little bit of time away from focusing like hardcore on the marketing agency, and I was traveling Europe. I was having a lot of these like really incredible experiences every single day, and then I got back and I just like couldn't for the life of me get back to work. Like I just for whatever I knew like what I needed to do and all these things, and like I had all these tools and resources to be structured and all these things, but it dawned on me, I was just like, dude, your dopamine is out of whack. Like you just had like a crazy awesome experience every single day, the novelty, the excitement, the happiness, and like, yeah, no shit, you don't feel like sitting in front of the computer and working on stuff. Like, of course. So I decided to put myself through a dopamine detox. And for the next 3 months, I actually cut out all drugs and alcohol. I cut out masturbation, having sex, cut out like communication with women, period. I started implementing other habits to replace this stuff. So I made it a habit to take a cold shower or cold plunge every morning, first thing. Work out every day, usually is following the cold exposure, do a meditation practice at least once or twice a day. Eat extremely clean according to like what I know my diet is. Practice really good sleep hygiene. And this is the first time in my life that I ever did this. And it really dawned on me. I mean, the first month, like I noticed actually like after the first few days, I was just like driving to the gym and like I was just like cracking up and like singing and like I just felt like like lighter and happier. And I was like, oh, this is a little different, like interesting. And and then I noticed even my capacity for like, I think before this, like if I had a friend who was like, hey, like let's do a workout today, like together. And he would be like, yeah, like, why don't you come to my gym? I would think about it and be like, I could drive 10 minutes to my gym and just get a workout by myself, or drive 25 minutes to like go work out with you. I'd be like, like, I don't even want to drive that extra 15 minutes, which is nothing really when you think about it in like the grand scheme. But during this time period, I'd be like stoked. I'd be like, great, I get to hang out with my friend. And like, I started to realize that I was getting dopamine from things that are way better. Like,
Mhm.
and prior to this, I think it's a very important part of the story is that I had a addiction to smoking weed all the time. I was big advocate of smoking weed, and I was a very productive stoner. I'd be able to get all my shit done and smoke weed all day long. And I think like you know I don't want to get off too much on a tangent. And I think I'll bring it in as I continue to explain this. I noticed that these little things were really helpful, like to just like wanna go that like extra mile and be okay with it. Like there was no like tension to go do these things that like before would be a little bit difficult. And I remember like sometimes like I don't know, it could be something as stupid as like I gotta take out the trash, and I'm like, I gotta take out the trash. Like all right, but like,
Mhm.
what'd be better is like if I smoke a joint and then go take out the trash. Like that would be more fun. It would be like this reach for something external to feel good to go do these things that were difficult. And after about like I think like a month and a half, I had this like very like eye-opening realization that it really doesn't matter whether it's weed, alcohol, sex, masturbation, heroin, like it's all just an escape. We need to remove that stigma of like this is better than this or that is better than this or whatever. It's really all the same. You're escaping, you're running away from the things that you need to do by turning to things that will affect your inner world. By the end of this like 3-month period, I was so addicted to just getting shit done. And I remember like some of my colleagues and friends like being like, "GianMarco, are you on like Adderall or something?" And I'd be like, no, I'm just like addicted to getting shit done. Like, well, that's where I'm getting my dopamine from. That felt good too. And like at the end of this 3 months, I started to take some reflection because I wanted to keep doing it. Like I wanted to continue this monk mindset. But I realized at the end of it, I was like, dude, you're not a monk. That's not who you are. Like, you love to play. Like, you do have this like innate thing as although like you're into all this biohacking and diet and stuff like that, you do have this value that's like, what is life if you don't have a piece of cake every once in a while? If you don't go, do these things that, especially if they bring you happiness, going back to that. But I think it's super important to make that justification. And I started to realize that like, I need to learn how to balance these things. I need to learn how to be able to go from like having fun to working hard and create a good relationship with both because that's who I actually am. It's more authentic that way. I wasn't being really authentic when I was Monk Marco. I thought this was really powerful. And, with like social media being like so addictive the way it is, that was another thing that like I put limits on. We're living in a world where our dopamine is being attacked more than anything. There's so much entertainment, so many things that are just consuming our mind, consuming our worlds, forcing us to reach external outside of ourselves for that feeling of happiness or good, whatever good feeling that is. I think it's really important that we tune back in and we start to create a relationship with our dopamine. And going back to what I said I would like about the weed thing, it's like I've since smoked weed. I don't think weed is bad. I think it's a plant medicine. I think used in the right way in ritual, it can be really helpful. And I noticed like the first time I did smoke weed, like after all this, like I had some really creative insights. Like I was articulating myself in a different way that I kind of liked. Like my perspective changed. And I found that really insightful. But I knew that if I were to continue to smoke weed every day, all day long, that would drop my dopamine again. And then I would feel like it would cloud my judgment on like who I'm trying to be, how I'm trying to show up. And it would zap my like motivation. And over the last year, I've noticed that, for example, when I was out at Burning Man this year, I was like, this is the time where you smoke weed. You're out at Burning Man. You like to do it. Like you enjoy it. Like this is a great time to smoke weed every day. But I noticed like when I got back, my motivation wasn't there. And then I stopped smoking. And then within 2, 3 days, boom, I was happy again. My motivation was there. After kind of having those experiences, I realized like it's all about balance. It's okay if you reward yourself with these things that are innately not good sometimes. But understanding like how that's going to affect you in the days coming and building that better relationship with those things so that ultimately you can create balance.
Yeah, I think you said something so important there, the keyword being relationship, right? So it's your relationship to the thing.
Hmm.
Maybe marijuana isn't inherently bad. Maybe it's the relationship that one forms with it that can be bad. It's like allowing yourself to have it when you're just enjoying yourself at Burning Man, but not doing it on a consistent basis where it becomes this thing that is now working against you.
Totally. And it happens quick. I mean, all
Yeah.
these things outside of ours, it's a slippery slope and it happens
Yeah.
fast. And, I think like anyone who's struggling with one of those things, my recommendation for you would be do a dopamine detox
Mhm.
and it'll recorrect your relationship with these things, and it doesn't need to be permanent for the rest of your life. And for some of you, I bet it's going to be so powerful that you might never pick up whatever that substance is again, or that thing external, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. It'll reset it. I realize like when I'm smoking weed, I want to like keep the peace. Like, I want everyone to be, like, even keel, like, I wanna just make sure that, like, everyone's heard, everyone's seen, which I think is a core value of mine in general, but I realize, like, when I'm sober, I'm a little bit more ruthless, like, I'm way less afraid of, like, confrontation and being, like, giving tough love and all these things, and I think that's absolutely necessary. Like, I think you have to sometimes have a little bit of "fuck you" is how I call it, like, quote, unquote, and, I think like with certain substances, it kind of keeps you in this like la la land of like wanting to make sure that everything's good all the time. And, with every like vice, there is like a different, I think, drawback to it. If masturbation's your thing, right? Your drive to actually go create intimacy in your life and create a relationship where you're having that, it's going to suck it away. You're not going to have the motivation to go find a partner that you have real intimacy with because you're blowing it away like as often as you are. And so I think like each vice, you got to analyze like what your vices are and understanding what the drawbacks are. And then how to come back if you do like relapse, or if you like gift yourself that reward, which is okay, but understand what the reparations are of that.
Yeah, that's good. That's really, really good. Thank you for going there and saying that. I see you like helping men. I don't know why. I don't know if that's like a vision of yours, but for some reason, the way that you speak and the way that you um just your embodiment, I feel like is something men could really resonate with.
So I've been hearing this like for maybe a decade. Earlier in my 20s, like people would tell me this, like, you need to start a men's group or you need to help coach more men and stuff like that. And I'd be like, absolutely not. Like, I want to be around more women. Like, I
Yeah,
I
but
think at
what
that
part of you
time,
wants to be around women?
let me explain. And so I think at that time, especially like in my earlier 20s and stuff, I grew up in like a very masculine household. Like my mother is very
Mm.
masculine energy. My dad is very masculine energy. I had an older brother and like everything was very masculine. But like as I was going down that like self-development path, I started to learn a lot about like the balance between masculine and feminine energy, and like understanding that feminine energy is about receiving and understanding. And so at the time when people would say that to me, I'd be like, no, I still have so much to learn about my feminine energy. Like I don't want to just put myself in boxes where I'm around men. Like I still have so much to learn about my feminine side. And and I've spent a lot of time like creating a better relationship with my feminine side. And I think maybe now I'm in a different stage of my life where I think I could actually serve men better because I have such a better understanding of what it means to step into that feminine energy. I think I can bridge the gap. I'm not against like working in cohabitating environments, and I think it's really helpful for women to hear what men talk about in terms of like in a men's circle and vice versa. Like I think there's a lot of benefits to us understanding like the real innate struggles that the opposite sex goes through. So I mean, I personally prefer like being in those environments where I can do both. But I definitely think I do provide a strength to just talking 1v1 with men and making these things that are like, I think like in some guys' minds, like, oh, that's lame. Like, no, it's like, no, dude, it's cool. Like, look, it's okay to be stepping into your feminine. I'm a very like masculine guy, but I step into my feminine. I think the way that I show up in those type of environments, I do get the respect of the other men. And I think it would open up, that perspective with other men. And like I see this often in I'm a lead of a nonprofit called the Cold Yogis. We teach breath work and cold exposure. And you know, our other the founders and Dustin, Moon and Rafa, they are also, some of the most masculine guys I know, but they've spent years and years harboring their feminine side. I look up to them so much. I mean, they really like step into the masculine energy in a way where um it inspires me so much, but can also tap into that feminine energy and lead with both. And being in these retreats and environments where we're teaching breath work, and especially with the cold exposure, I mean, walking people through something that they never thought they could do, getting into a cold plunge, they think they're going to die or have a heart
Mhm.
attack or something. I mean, it surfaces your biggest fears. And I mean, the things I've seen in these workshops, I mean, are insanely powerful. And little side note, I mean, typically we use the cold exposure as a carrot to get people in, but really, like, the bigger work is done during the breath work. Like, the breath work is
Yeah.
really the powerful thing. The cold exposure, I think, brings up a lot of, things to the surface very fast. But if you spend a lot of time doing breath work, I mean, that's where you do some really, really deep healing. Going with like with men especially, like I think a lot of their traumas and stuff, get built up. But it's like, when they see one of us who's very experienced get into a cold plunge and not even flinch and be so calm and grounded, I think this is a big reflection point. And I think there's a lot of these guys who like think they're so alpha and then they step into a cold plunge and they act 5-year-old. And, and I think it's a wake-up call for them. It humbles them, and I think this is a beautiful thing. This is most likely where we've been talking a lot, me, Dustin, and Rafa, about, leading a men's group, actually. We're still working on some titles and we've been looking into getting a space and going in that direction. And I've been the one out of all of us kind of advocating, well, like, can't we do like men and women? Like, and they're like, yeah, like, maybe, but they really think that like men need it. Um, and I see the benefit to both. And I'm like, I'm not shutting down the idea. Like I'm open to both. I just think that also like men can benefit from seeing women doing the same thing that they're doing and maybe even having more composure. Like, I think there's a
Mm,
benefit to that. And, a lot of times, like, working with couples, like, getting into cold exposure, it's oftentimes the women do way better than the men.
hmm.
And,
Interesting.
it's kind of a insightful thing. It's a beautiful thing. To see, and it's very humbling, and seeing people get out of it and realizing they're more powerful than they gave themselves credit. I mean, that's why we do it. Like, that's what drives
Hmm.
that. It's such an easy way to tap into that.
So, where can people find you and connect with you if they want to explore anything that you're offering? Maybe what you just mentioned with the breath work and the ice.
Uh, coldyogis.org. We also are Cold Yogis on Instagram. My personal Instagram is GianMarco_Ricchiari. So
I'll link everything below
yeah, link
too.
that there.
Yeah,
You can also go to marketingwithmarco.com, where you can see some of our marketing services. Feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm always happy to nerd out about this stuff. I think, the place where I feel the most live, the place where I'm best version of myself is when I'm connecting and talking with people. That's what drives me. And I'm here to help. Take me up on it.
thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your advice and your experience.
Just likewise. I appreciate your time and energy.